Well, welcome to another Reaction Life video. My name is Tim Montgomerie, recently joined the team, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Alastair Stewart, who, well, as I say, we're recording on Friday, and in 2 days' time, gbnews launches, which is Britain's newest television station. And Alastair, you have a prime slot on this channel, which I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about in a moment. But why should fundamentally viewers tune into this new channel as you launch in the next few days?
Good day to you, Tim, and it's lovely to talk to you. I think there's a genuine appetite that has surprised even us, whether you're measuring it on social media or inches in print, some of whom are our competitors and sworn enemies. But from Joe and Joanna Public, I think we've touched a nerve. People have screamed elegantly at last. I think it's partly because the mainstream broadcasters with whom I worked for many years, and Simon McCoy with the BBC, Andrew with the BBC, and various others, have become cautious, predictable, and the most brutal thing that one can say about them is that they have become a part of groupthink. They don't challenge the sharp alternatives. They can even occasionally be contemptuous of as I said on social media the other day, you know, the man stroke woman on the Clapham omnibus, and there's me being politically correct, or the bloke in the pub. And people really came down upon me like a ton of bricks, saying, oh, we want the experts and what have you. And of course we want the experts, we'll have them. But we genuinely want to know what folk are concerned about right across the United Kingdom. And for that, there seems to be a huge appetite. So it's a hell of a challenge and a delightful opportunity.
Looking at social media, there is definitely a lot of people who are your enthusiastic defenders already and your enthusiastic opponents before having seen a minute of your output. Is there anything danger that you're worried about, that some of those enthusiastic proponents are perhaps expecting something a little bit more right-wing, a little bit more Fox News, a little bit more conservative, and they're going to be disappointed, and your proponents perhaps won't quite have that sort of something to campaign against that they were hoping for, because you'll be a little bit too reasonable for them? Might you be not quite such a radical alternative as people are thinking?
Well, funny enough, if my very good friend Carol Midgley wrote that in the Times, I don't think I'd be terribly upset. That sounds to me to be a not unreasonable outcome. It's a really good question, because some of those, as it were, madcap supporters, and I don't mean they're loonies, I mean they're just so hungry for it and up for it.
Because the enthusiasm is huge on social media.
It's phenomenal. I mean, we've got well over 250,000 followers on Twitter, and as you rightly said, without transmitting, well, no, we have transmitted a frame. We've got a couple of rather nice little 5-minute promotional things running, but we haven't actually done a program. But you know, some of those who are so enthusiastic are saying, you know, I hope you'll be going on about these ghastly illegal immigrants piling in at Dover day in, day out and put the boot into Priti Patel. Answer no. Answer, we will look at immigration, of course we will, if it crops up on the agenda, and we will look at perhaps a little more closely at how the people in Folkestone and Dover and along the Kent coast feel about it, and on the East Coast, what's really going on in France about it. But it isn't simply a knee-jerk reaction, immigration bad, and illegal immigration sinful. And funnily enough, I'll give you one little example. One of the things I want to do on my program is very much to reflect success and achievement and innovation. And we've got one chunk that we're kind of calling Rising Stars.
Your program's called Alastair Stewart and Friends, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, I'm hoping people like Tim Montgomerie will drop by and chat and chew the cud over, but also MPs who are friends from all parties, I hasten to add, and other people I know in various walks of life. But one of my rising stars is a young guy who has set up a brilliantly successful media operation, and is working hard and paying his taxes and his national insurance and employing people. 10 years ago, he was an illegal immigrant.
Wow, that's great. And we don't get enough of that on news.
Well, I think we don't, and I think that's exactly GB News, because if there is something that is fundamentally wrong and needs addressing, then we'll do it. But it may be that it's people jumping the queue on welfare benefits.
Yeah.
It may be people claiming welfare benefits to which they are not entitled. But it may equally be the little old lady living down the road on her own who doesn't do social media and doesn't do the internet and what have you, who is entitled to something and has got in touch with our North of England correspondent and said how tough life is. We'll seek to do something about that as well. So, you know, we have not thrown balance out of the window. My argument is quite the opposite. I think some of the mainstream broadcasters have thrown balance out of the window. You know, Johnson bad, Starmer good, left-wing approaches to colonialism good, an intelligent reflection on what Cecil Rhodes actually did and Her Majesty the Queen actually did on racism and colonialism bad. We'll say, well, that's complete and utter nonsense. Here's a grown-up and intelligent view of it.
Yeah, and I think you were on at 9 o'clock. Is that right?
No, I'm my first appearance. I'm really thrilled to bits because I only heard it the other day. Is Andrew Neil, who I have known and admired for a long time. A man you know much about was a very close mutual friend, Sir Alastair Stewart. Taught him a great deal when they were working together at The Economist, and Alastair taught me everything I know when we were together at ITN. So whether this was happening or not, I think Neil is everything that you've read about him. Simply one of the greatest. And he's invited me and one or two other chums onto his 8 p.m. launch on Sunday the 13th, 2 days away. So that's great. I then kick off at midday on Saturday the 19th, and I'm on for 3 hours, and I do it again on the Sunday. So I'm 12 till 3, Alastair Stewart and friends.
Okay. And so you obviously have these different strands of programs, and people talk about a GB News thing, but I suppose all of the shows will have their own special characteristics. And
I think they will. And going back to something you said earlier on about, you know, people who may be disappointed via expectation, I think they kind of fall into two chunks. We've got an amazing lineup of people who will do our daily breakfast program, which clearly is, you know, one of the first bites of the cherry. A number of people start their day with breakfast television on whichever channel it might be, or Sky, or they listen to Radio 4, Radio 5, Times. Yeah, it's a very crowded marketplace, make no mistake about that. And we will give an offer at breakfast, which will reflect perhaps more of the traditional news agenda, as well as the GB News unique stamp upon it. I think then as the day develops, up to, for example, on Friday, Andrew's show at 8 o'clock, it will become much more about who's doing it. So, you know, Gloria De Piero and Liam Halligan is one combination I genuinely cannot wait to see, because I've admired Liam for a long time as a brilliant economics writer with the Sunday Telegraph, and does quite a bit on Channel 4. I had him on the talk radio show when I used to do that. And I've known Gloria from her GMTV days when she did breakfast telly, and she was a damn fine TV presenter then, went into the Labour Party, took a really intelligent and critical view of where Labour was going, and now, lo and behold, turns up at GB News. But what an amazing combination. And I cannot see Liam and Gloria sort of doing that traditional news agenda. I can see them, and I've talked to both of them about it, what are the opportunities that coming out of the pandemic offer the British economy? When the Bank of England says, you know, it's firing on all cylinders, how, who, where, what can't we do, what can we do? If Elon Musk comes to the United Kingdom, and that would be a jolly good thing, the impact that it will have on the precious metals and rare earths industries in Wales, and how will the Welsh folk, you know, it's endless.
Yeah.
And it's not just, oh, it says on the front page of PA, bless their heart, and I love PA, here's the agenda, these are the things that are happening today. Yeah, we've got to a stage nowadays, and I've got children who barely sit down and watch a mainstream television news program, one of whom's a headmistress and one of whom writes about football for TIFO, and they are as well informed as you and me, because they look it up themselves, they listen to all sorts of stuff, and they do it online. The idea of sitting down at 1 o'clock, 6 o'clock or 10 o'clock and listening to the news is utterly alien to that audience, and we'll be there for them when they want it. We'll also be streaming stuff. So if I've got a brilliant interview with, you know, Tim Montgomerie arguing with Danny Finkelstein or something, then, you know, if you
obviously knew what happened at the Times. We were obviously both conservatives, but we were constantly disagreeing on the future of conservatism. You must have been a fly on the wall.
But funnily enough, but that's exactly what I like. Yeah, it's that thing about how can I put it? I call them the useful idiots sometimes. And I sometimes sit and watch, not former colleagues of mine, because they tend to be elsewhere, kind of putting across the Labour line slightly better than, say, Keir Starmer himself might put it across. And there is a consensus. And the last thing that anybody tuning in to watch news and current affairs wants is a consensus. They want an intelligent discussion. And ditto, people like you and Danny and another brilliant friend, David Aronovich.
I'm certainly up for doing that. And anyone, by the way, who's watching this who wants to see some brilliant sporting illustrations should certainly look at what your son does for TIFO. They are fantastic. Can I say, GB News is obviously the name, and I'm guessing that you won't be telling government ministers why they got such a big Union Jack behind them in their studio. I don't think you're going to be a station embarrassed about the United Kingdom. But what for those, how much is it going to be GB News and a sort of a news station about what's happening in Britain? Will you be giving your viewers, for me, probably the issue of our age is China, the rise of China and what we do about it. Have you got the sort of foreign policy reach, the access, the reporters, to be able to report on big events in the world? Because you're relatively small, obviously, compared to the BBC. How do you compete on that with them?
I'm not evading the question. I'll come to it head on. But your point, I only want to underline, and it's not a criticism, it's an observation from an informed interviewer, is we are small. And as I've said to you before, we're very small. It's a startup. It was a clean sheet of paper. We have a network of correspondents around the United Kingdom, but we have deals with Reuters and AP, for example. But no, at this juncture, we do not have, the equivalent of some of the great correspondents, the Orla Gurins and Simpsons around the world. That's not what we are. But what I would argue is that we have a team of presenters who will be sufficiently inquisitive and well-informed that take China. It's a perfect example. I would absolutely love to sit down with Tom Tugendhat. And underline this, Tim, if you agree or disagree.
The chairman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, for those who don't know him,
I beg your pardon, quite thank you for that. I'd rather sit down and spend 15 minutes with him talking about it than I would even the Foreign Secretary, because the Foreign Secretary, Dominic Raab, good man though he is constrained.
Absolutely, and it'd be much more informative for your viewers, definitely.
Absolutely, and we were joking the other day about, we're not going to try and outdo Andy Marr on a Sunday. Andy does a good job. People have their own views of him. I'm a big fan. End of, move on. But there's no point in me being the fifth person who interviews Dominic Raab that day. No. But the idea of talking to Tom Tugendhat or Tobias Ellwood on defence, after the cabinet secretary for that particular area has given his or her best to Sophie Ridge and Andy Marr and the rest of them, then I would love to dismantle what he or she said with somebody like the chair of the select committee. And final point, we also care passionately about education. Well, I do anyway, partly because Clem's a headmistress, but we've got 4 kids who went to schools as diverse as our local comprehensive down the road in Winchester College, and pretty well everything in between. And Robert Halfon is one of my current total heroes. And I think to get his view on how these things are doing, and I think Kate Green, you see, we're not just partisan. I think Green's doing a really, really good job on
education spokesman,
really probing, and that whole argument about the Sir Kevin Collins report, and Rishi couldn't find the money, and Johnson wanted the money, or did he? I don't know. You're never going to get the fundamental truths from the top players, because they're playing another game at the same time. But goodness me, you'll get it from shadow spokespeople, and you'll get it from chairs of select committees. As far as being in China, no, Debbie Edward did for ITN, utterly brilliant. The BBC have got a good team there. We will have to find a way of covering it. Deft footwork, intelligent selection of guests, and well-informed, passionate presenters. Final point is we will have our views as well. Within the Ofcom regulation, we can have our view with balance and due impartiality across the spectrum.
Because I'm looking forward to that, because I don't know if you remember, I kind of thought guess at your views, but I grew up watching your sort of 5:45, news bulletin on ITN, and it was brilliant, Alastair. But I think one of your strengths was you reported the news. You weren't
Yes.
giving your views. But this is obviously a different format, and a little bit more of the real Alastair Stewart is about to be revealed, I sense.
Well, I think so, and to steal a bit of Marxist philosophy, the dialectic, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. The thesis was that I was deputy president of the National Union of Students with my lovely friends John Reed and Charles Clark. Charles was Labour Party member. John, in those days, member of the Communist Party, who then joined Labour. Yeah. I was non-aligned, always was non-aligned, but I took a left-wing view, more public spending, save industries by nationalisation, as Dennis Healey.
Sounds like the modern Boris Johnson Conservative Party.
well, there's a thing. But I completely subscribe to the Dennis Healey theory that if you're not a left-winger and even a commie when you're a kid, you're not really thinking. Yeah. And then the antithesis was when I got my first job at Southern Television, the chairman said, "You're an old lefty, aren't you? That's fine. I don't have any objection to that, but it stays at the door. If you're going to read the news or work here as a reporter, it stays at the door." Best bit of advice I have ever been given. And the synthesis now is, after 40 years of service as an impartial, totally balanced reporter and presenter, I now can loosen things a little. I would never dream of, because I don't think the media has a role to do it. We can have an hour-long argument about the difference between broadcasting and print, but I don't think it's right for us to say, in Batley and Spen, you should definitely vote for George Galloway because that would be the most fun outcome, or that you should definitely vote for Labour because, otherwise it will become an autocracy, or vote Conservative. The arguments, we can have great fun discussing them. But it is definitely our job to probe into the candidates, the issues up there, but also, let me sit down and chat to Deanna Davison, Bishop Auckland MP, one of the great rising stars. What does she think? Is the government delivering to those who are behind the red wall, et cetera, et cetera? It's just a different tilt, and I will be saying a little of what I think about it as well. I hope folk find it interesting.
Final question before I let you go in what must be a busy period, and you've probably got to look after all those donkeys and animals in your you live around as well. I wanted to really come down and do the interview live and see them.
You'd be very welcome, Tim, because I'm currently looking out at I'm looking at 3. One's a lovely show jumper, one's a little mini one that never went anywhere, but we don't get rid of them because we love them all, and the other is an Exmoor rare breed called Dormouse, who's just there. It is, we are blessed, literally blessed.
Well, final question from me, and we've been quite political in this discussion we've had today, but one thing that frustrates me about, for example, the Today programme is nearly always the person interviewed at 8:10, their major interview, is a politician. But actually, university academics, bankers, business people, tech entrepreneurs, it's often these people rather than politicians that have the power today in our society. And a lot of it is unaccountable power. Will you be going after them in the same way television and goes after politicians? Because there does seem to me to be a sort of almost an over politicization in the news in some respects, and the people that we should be holding to account get away with it sometimes.
Well, I say 2 words to you, Liam Halligan, who is a good, he's a brilliant economist in his own right, but a great journalist and a great prober. But yes, I think you're right. But let me give you 2 answers to it. One, the upside, as it were, is that people like Kate Bingham and the team at Oxford University on the vaccines, for example. Yeah, Nadeem Zahawi and his mob have done a brilliant job and power to their elbow. And I think also, funnily enough, on vaccines, that's one of the areas where Labour have been more intelligently constructive by supporting, and we are now all of us reaping the benefits of it. I think the media was utterly brutal and offensively bad towards Kate Bingham and hounded her out. Mainly because she was married to a Tory MP and rather a bright one at that. And I don't think there's been enough celebration of the fact that those Oxford University dons also run a business. You know, anyone who knows anything about, you know, Warwick University and its business school, the Said Centre, that's what our universities do nowadays. And as long as they remember to educate the undergraduates as well, power to their elbow. On the other hand, if you've got people who are ripping off pension funds, and if you've got people who are taking utterly obscene paychecks whilst not building enough houses for people who need them, yeah, lovely. Door ajar, kicked in, big old boots worn by Halligan, but also by the rest of us. Gloria De Piero, for example, on the housing crisis, brilliant. We were having a chat about transport the other day in one of the rehearsals, and how you gradually get it back, and HS and all of the rest of it. And she said that people in my old constituency, they just want to get from where they live to where they work. And that's a blooming nightmare, because either the links aren't there or it's too expensive. So we will talk to ordinary folk about their reality, as well as, yes, totally answer your question, taking on people like that as well. But don't forget what I said at the beginning, Tim, too. It's my show's at the weekend, and we will do that as and when we need to, but I will consciously and with great effort make space for those who've done well, because to me the tipping point that we find ourselves broadcasting from is the most exciting, because we are still finding our way out of Brexit, whatever people say, and the Northern Ireland Protocol and sausages is but one example of it. There's fishing, there's all sorts of other things, despite some colleagues telling us all those years ago, nobody will be talking about tariffs. That was so annoyed me. But coming into the post-Brexit phase and coming into the post coronavirus phase is a period of enormous opportunity, and we've got to make sure that it's a bit like the Roaring Twenties, that's one of the current trendy analogies, but that it doesn't end in a general strike and a Wall Street crash.
Let's hope not. Well, look, I don't think I shall be there with sausages on Sunday evening, but I think tortilla chips and dipping salsa sauce or some sort, I'll be there to watch, and I really wish you the best of luck. I know the BBC is terrified, would be the wrong way of describing it, but they're concerned that they're about to face the stiffest competition they have for a very long time. But I think both of us believe in competition, and hopefully your arrival will improve everybody else as well. Let's hope so.
That's very kind of you, and thank you for the time. And let me finish on the same point, as it were, that you chose to finish upon. I hope that the BBC and my colleagues at ITN and Sky and everywhere else give it an open mind and listen to it. And there may be bits that they think we get catastrophically wrong, or, hey, do you know what? They might actually see things that they could try and do a little bit of it. The only people I fear for, and I fear for the nation because of them, are those that shrug with complacency and just ignore us. Yeah. Because that's rude to us, but we're big enough to take it. But it does reflect upon something fundamentally wrong deep down in their hearts. Yeah. They aren't getting it right. They aren't perfect. If they were getting it right and they were perfect, we wouldn't be there.
Open-mindedness is the biggest thing missing in our society at the moment. And if you can bring a little bit more of that to our country's debate, it'll be well worth it. Alastair Stewart, good luck. Thank you for your time. And I'll come down and visit the donkey soon.
Anytime, Tim, and thank you for your time.
Bye-bye.